But yeah, that was when the strawberry was going bananas. There wasn't anything between 7.8 and 15, and I needed something that was like 10 gallons, and they didn't have anything in my local brew shop. So I went with the 15 and thought, okay, now I have to make something that'll fit this.
Monster size.
So that's interesting, though. I would not have thought on the, when you're caramelizing honey. I guess I never realized that converts the sugar to a non-fermentable sugar. I just figured it was converting it more from, it was kind of like the difference between like white sugar and brown sugar, that it was just darker,
I think once you hit a certain threshold and you've kicked moisture off to a certain level, you're really just starting to break it down at that point. So, I don't know enough about the science on candy making, but
so that's beyond my ken. What about you? What about you, David? You've done Bochets. You want to weigh in on all of this?
Yeah, anecdotally, just my first two Bochets, I caramelized all the honey, took it to a dark mahogany, but they fermented down to about 1008.
Okay.
So not really that much residual sweetness.
And how far did you caramelize it?
It was a dark mahogany color.
Okay. Interesting.
If you were using wine yeast...
Do what?
If you're using wine yeast, and that's still about 15-ish points that you're still retaining as far as some residual sugar over... I mean, most time wine yeast will take it dry and then point below 1 on the specific gravity meter.
Yeah.
996 is probably typical.
I was using the Virka dry mead yeast.
The which one?
The Virka dry mead yeast.
Oh, the dry mead yeast, right.
Okay. I haven't used that one
but,
yet.
I'll also add that caramelizing 1 gallon of honey in a 5-gallon stock pot, the pot's not quite big enough.
Really?
Okay.
Oh, that's good to know.
Good to know.
Yeah, real good to know.
Having to partially disassemble a 1950 O'Keefe and Merrick stove for cleaning was not fun.
Oh, dude, yeah. Now, I think that this would be one of those things where you'd almost want to do it on the turkey fryer base outside,
Yeah, let's just say I've got a full propane cylinder now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We just got a new freestanding gas grill, freestanding 2-burner jobby that we got for camping, and I'm thinking, okay, when I attempt mine, it's going to be my biggest stock pot, and it'll be outside, so at least I'll have less mess to clean up, if it does go over. So, are you guys using, like just standard stainless steel pans, or are you going with an enamel bottom? I mean, what's the...
Stainless steel is usually what we have available for us, not only because the background in beer making, that was already equipment already, but enamel bottom, I wouldn't think there's be much of a problem. I'd tend to like stainless steel for just cooking, just because it's just
less transferability.
Yeah, it just has a lot of properties, mechanical properties, the ability to transfer heat well, thick bottoms most of the time.
Well, it depends on the pot, yeah.
Yeah, it does depend. You can go to the really thin ones.
Pots that have those thin bottoms and everything burns, so, yeah.
Exactly. I actually would shy away from the really thin bottom ones for cooking that stuff, because you're going to get some the film right there at the burner level. There's not enough for the heat to dissipate evenly across there, so it gets blasted right in a certain area.
Now,
so
what you could do, if you're doing this on a barbecue, is if you can, find someone who's got metal and just get like 1/8-inch steel or something like that, and make a
dissipation device. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, something that distributes it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like having a thick bottom pot, only the thick bottom comes off the pot.
Sure. Yep.
It's actually really good.
That'd certainly work.
Or if you got a cast iron skillet,
I'm all about the workarounds.
What was that, David? Cast iron what?
If you got a big enough cast iron skillet or griddle for the pot to sit on.
Oh, there's a good idea.
Dutch oven or something.
Yeah. Because I've got a couple of Dutch ovens, but I don't know if either of them are big enough to hold the bottom. But I know my dad has one of those, and I've been trying to pry it away from him for years now. He's got one of those cast iron skillets that's like 2 foot across, biggest skillet I've ever seen.
That is perfect for a stock pot.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget, with the regular skillet, you can flip it upside down too to set your pot on.
Oh yeah, good point. That's like cooking in a wok, but it's a stock pot, you know?
Yeah. I hear you about preferring stainless, because I've actually damaged some of my enamel pots doing dumb things in them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have to look at the chemistry, too. There are certain... stainless is the only... So far as I know, stainless is the only type of pot where you're not going to get any chemical transference into whatever it is that you're making. And that's one of the things, because I used to, when I'm doing like tinctures and making salves, that's one of the things that they're always talking about is if it's not a particular type of pot, then you're going to get chemical transference. It's going to change characteristics of whatever it is you're making.
Yeah, glass or stainless, I think, are your best.
Pretty much.
Pyrex or stainless.
Finding a Pyrex that size, I don't even think it exists.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
and that's not going to handle the temperature differentials all that well. I mean, it's Pyrex and it's awesome, but it still shatters sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why they use it in sanitary conditions in restaurants and whatnot all the time. It just doesn't really transfer much. Easy to clean. A lot of things are nice about it. So
easy to clean, hard to scratch.
Yep.
And if you have to, you can take scrub buds to it.
Getting a good piece of equipment that you take care of, and it serves your purposes for a lot of different things. A multi-purpose tool, if you will.
Yeah.
Is always a good thing.
Yeah. Now I'm in my head. I'm going over, and I know we had purchased a giant stainless soup pot that we take when we go on our black powder camping trips, because we often make meals for like the entire team, so like we're feeding 12, 15 people. And we bought this ginormous stainless steel pot with a really nice thick bottom, and I believe it's like 3 or 4 gallons. So
that might be the thing.
Yeah, it might be. But then if David's right, then I can't
do a half gallon at a time.
You're right. I could do like a quart at a time, and it'll still bubble all the way to the top. It'll be in stages.
Yeah.
Are you using a candy thermometer to track your temperatures?
I got a pretty nice electric thermometer, so it does pretty well. But yeah, basically, the candy thermometer works very well.
Yeah.
Just don't break it in your...
Right. And it's also probably not quite as precise as an electric thermometer. I haven't got anything quite that fancy yet, but yeah. You have your lab now, so since you're professional, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that carried over from just going, in the hobby side of things. You're like, I need that piece of equipment. So you get bit by the bug.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, definitely in the lab. We've gotten a lot of that stuff now that it carries over as far as being high utility. But I still use floating thermometers for certain things, and we got a variety of tools for doing that. But the candy thermometer works great for testing that stuff. But it's kind of hard to see sometimes when the bubbles are real high, when it's expanding out and you're boiling it and it's rolling over, and you're like, I'm not really sure how to dip that thermometer inside there, when it's, especially when you're seeing a gallon and a 5-gallon stock pot, and if it's that much foam that's expanded over, it's kind of hard to get it down there. You kind of have to brush it away with a long-handled spoon and see if you can't get down there without getting burned. But it's a bit of a challenge trying to do that. The pot that I use actually has a thermometer on the side, on the side of it, screwed in there. It's a brew pot. So, like I said, you buy a piece of equipment that you use for a lot of different things, and it's kind of already convenient to do that in a larger size.
Well, we've got a question from Paul Johnson, and dealing with the whole equipment thing. And he says, has anyone else used a pressure cooker for their bochets? He says he found it was easier, quicker, and cleaner than using his crock pot, which is what he was using before. So I was thinking the same thing, because I have an electric pressure cooker called an Instant Pot that I was thinking, wow, it might be an interesting way to do it. So I'm curious.
I've read about people doing that, but they've put the honey in jars first.
How do you keep track of how much scorching you have, though?
Yeah, that's a good point. How do you keep track of the color of the honey when it's in a pressure cooker?
Yeah, I've had a couple of examples of. I've had a few homebrewers that were done with pressure cooker honey, and it's just not. It's really not quite the same effect, I would say. And admittedly, the results, at least the brewers who presented them, to me and said that they felt that it was substandard result compared to doing it the traditional way. But it does work if your goal is to darken the honey and sort of get a caramel character. It does do that, but it's a little bit less. It's more of a caramel apple kind of flavor that you get, I think, versus the more traditional Bochet character where you're getting the nice dark rich mahogany and this red notes. It's just not going to be there.
Well, that makes sense. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
I said that makes the Pfizer Bochet come to mind with that caramel apple flavor.
I know. I was kind of thinking that sounds actually kind of good, depending on what you're trying to make. But I can see where, because when I was thinking pressure cooker earlier, I thought, okay, but you're not going to get that sort of burnability that you get when you're doing it over a heat source in an open container. And I think
it won't burn, and that's one nice safety net, I think, about it.
Yeah.
But you're also not going to get quite all the same character from what reading I've done on it.
Right, that's what I was thinking, is that, you get that burnability, that not burnt taste, but that roasted taste that you can bring into it when you can get that darker mahogany, that more cooked honey, would be desirable depending on what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's to do experiments. At some point, you do a thing, and you take notes on it. You're like, okay, this is how it turned out. It's about having the right vocabulary to write down, how can I pinpoint what kind of flavor profile it is. And then you can blend it into other things if you know how it goes. But that's just everybody's doing their own experimentation. There's a lot of stuff to learn still in the mead making world. There's so many different options about doing stuff that it takes people to have these things. And as long as we have the same vocabulary we're talking about, people can kind of talk about techniques and what they're getting out of it and how people are still formulating recipes about doing all these blendings. Because for the most part, people doing experiments, and they're not writing it down, it's anecdotal to them, and they just they're a very oriented kind of person. They just keep refining that thing until they finally get a recipe that do it exactly this way. And as you build upon that, there's not necessarily delineation between this thing does this to a thing. There's all these compounded effects that happen throughout the process. And to kind of know that. So it's a matter of experimentation. People are writing those things down.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for information on one specific thing, then you have to only change one variable at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing I found with experimenting.
Because
if you try to change too many things, you'll never know what actually had an effect on what.
Yeah, I run into that a lot with people who have gotten recipes off of Got Mead, in various places, and I'll get an email going, well, I changed blah, 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 and blah, and I don't know why it does this. And it's like, well, I don't either.
Because you changed it.
That happens a lot with Ancient Orange.
Yeah,
as far as the Ancient Orange mead, all the time. People are like, I use totally different yeast. It's like, well, that's really made for bread yeast.
Then it's not Ancient Orange.
The balance is there for that, right? You use high tolerance champagne yeast, and it's dry as a bone and doesn't taste very good.
Then yuck. That's why it says use bread yeast.
That's why if you look at the original, and it always cracks me up, because all the way through
No, don't you touch that.
Don't you touch that. Don't change this. What did I tell you about that? All the way through it. It's just he's like, were you listening? No, don't. So, it's pretty funny that works out that way. But it's interesting. So you guys are planning on thinking about doing a commercial Bochet then, right?
We're still refining a couple of. I've probably got 6 pilots going on right now with Bochet with caramelized honey on it. So we're just trying to get it into the right blend of things. It's like, is it working well for this? I don't necessarily want to do a straight Bochet. I want to do either a fruit and spice one. So I've kind of got different angles on it, and some of them work out better than others. And I'm like, well, it's really interesting in my head, and that didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. So. Yeah, it does look good on paper, and then I give it to people, and they're like, I really like this. And I'm like, well, it's not what I thought it was going to turn out like. So what's in my brain is still not what's in the bottle. So back to the drawing board. And,
but sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, though.
Oh, no, it's just not what... At this point,
it's just
I'm
not what you wanted.
Critical of my things. Right, it's totally just about the recipe I have in my mind. Like, I'm trying to get good about formulating a recipe with the concept in mind, now that I know quite a bit about how all of these things interact with each other. And sometimes it just doesn't pan out the way you want it to. It's like, In fact, it's not a completely scratch, but you just take your notes back from it. It's like, I need less of this, more of this. Try this different technique here. Like you said, you try. There's only so much time in the day to try to make a